A few months ago, I had one of the most scariest things start happening. I would be talking to somebody, and then mid sentence, I would just kind of forget the word that I was thinking of. It was like I could think about what I was trying to describe, but the word had just completely vanished. It just wasn't there. I knew what I was trying to say. I could describe it if I needed to, but for the life of me, it would take me minutes to remember the word that I was going for. It was like I was reaching for something that had been there 1,000 times before, but then for whatever reason in that moment, I just couldn't get the word out. And the split second that followed, my brain didn't just go to, I must be tired. Maybe I'm just super stressed out. It really started to freak out. And, is this the beginning of something that I can't come back from? I've been hearing so much about dementia and Alzheimer's and the risks that we might have as women, especially as you get to like perimenopause or menopause. And there was just that sinking feeling in my stomach, kind of that quiet, terrifying question that I was really afraid to voice out loud or say, because, of course, if we say it out loud, that somehow is going to make it more real. Do you find yourself constantly grabbing convenience food or hitting the drive-thru because of your busy schedule? Are you tired of your clothes not fitting and wish you felt more like yourself again? Does the word diet make you cringe because of past failed attempts that left you hungry and deprived? I'm Alisha, a wife, mom, fitness, nutrition, and lifestyle coach for women. After years of dieting, losing, and regaining the same weight, I realized I needed a new approach. I was burnt out from trying to be everything to everyone and chasing a number on the scale. To truly show up as the wife and mom I wanted to be and to finally find freedom in my health meant redefining my relationship to food, exercise, my body, and most importantly, to myself. I discovered the power of brain-based nutrition, fitness, habits, and routines to create a healthy lifestyle without restriction or deprivation. And now I'm excited to share everything I've learned with you. If you're ready to follow a simple brain-based nutrition and fitness plan built on habits and routines designed for busy moms and women, you're in the right place. Let's do this together. If you have ever had a moment like that where you're talking, you're describing something, you're telling a story, and then all of a sudden you just couldn't grab the word. It was like it was just completely erased from your brain, or you've walked into a room and have no idea why you're there. I want to just kind of let you know that you're in good company and you're in the right place. And I want you to hear this before we go any further, is that your brain is not betraying you, but it might be sending you a little bit of a signal. The worst thing that we could do is just call it mom brain, just call it stress, just say, oh, I'm tired, or I must just be super busy and distracted and move on. Now, of course, it might be one or all of those things, but we don't want to miss something bigger if there's something else going on. Okay, let's talk about mom brain. Now, we all probably kind of know what that means, especially as moms. It's sort of that fuzzy, forgetful, can't find my keys. Why am I even standing in this room feeling? And we've been taught to really just treat it like maybe it's a badge of honor or it's kind of the punchline to a joke, right? It's that thing we say when it's like, oh gosh, sorry, it was just a mom brain moment. Sort of laugh it off and move on. But here is the problem with that, is that mom brain is a description. It's not necessarily a diagnosis. It doesn't really point to something else that could be going on. It's kind of the cognitive equivalent of just saying that your knee hurts and then, dismissing it, calling it a silly name like knee-itis, and then just moving on. You've named the symptom, but you've explained nothing, and you've given yourself really zero information about what to actually do with it. Because brain fog, that word finding difficulty, slight memory lapses, and mental fatigue in women over 35 are not necessarily just random acts of parenthood or being in the busy season of life. They can sometimes be symptoms, and those symptoms have causes, which in most cases, thankfully, causes tend to have solutions. But here's what maybe nobody is really talking about or telling you is that women are disproportionately affected by cognitive decline and Alzheimer's disease. Not because we're weaker, not because we live longer, but because we have a biology that includes that sweet little transition or hormonal transition in midlife. And if we're not paying attention, it can quietly accelerate brain aging during that exact window when it matters most. That window that I'm talking about, if you haven't guessed it already, it starts in perimenopause, which for many women can start in their late 30s or 40s, often decades before a single menopause symptom like hot flashes even shows up. So that quote unquote mom brain is what we call it when we don't have any better language. But today I want to give you a little bit of a better understanding, give you some levers that you can pull, and maybe a better way to talk about what's actually going on. So I didn't, of course, jump into Googling, am I getting dementia at midnight? I mean, that wasn't even really what crossed my mind, but I did think, oh my gosh, am I on some sort of a steady decline to this? I did, however, decide to get a little bit more intentional. So this is where I started a conversation with a medical practitioner about HRT. I had had labs done. My estrogen, progesterone, testosterone was all pretty low. Turns out that was probably also likely to years of underfueling, which coincidentally has still potentially even carried over now. So I did end up starting a little bit of HRT and just really kind of having that conversation with that practitioner about what was happening in my body hormonally right now, focused on dialing in my sleep and really actually trying to dial it in. So, not just trying to get more hours of sleep, but really taking a closer look at some habits in my life that were kind of affecting my sleep in ways that I never even thought about it. So, for me, some of those things included maybe not eating so close to bedtime, or definitely not eating a huge meal right before bed so that I'm not having to try to digest food when I'm supposed to be sleeping, upping my creatine, figuring out ways to kind of unwind. So, yes, taking a walk, but making sure that it was like a leisurely walk and not something that was going to get my heart rate up. Doing things that just kind of relieve a little bit of stress for me, help me get my brain to shut off. And then, of course, deleting apps off of my phone so that I'm less likely to just hop on those one more time before going to bed. I did also make some investments in some higher quality supplements, including solid gut supplementation, a women's foundational pack, which I'll have some of those links down in the show notes if you guys want to check out the supplements that I'm using as well, and really started paying attention to what the research was saying. So people like Dr. Gabrielle Lyon on really that muscle brain connection, Dr. Stacey Sims on what perimenopause can actually do to the female brain. And a recent find of mine is Dr. Rhonda Patrick. So she is one of the most rigorous science doctors and communicators working in this space, especially around brain health and aging. So what I found is that there really isn't one magic bullet, but there is a framework that we can use and we can implement, that we can, try and tweak and try again until we figure out what works for us. And everything that we do inside the Strong Her Way community, the training, the nutrition, really the identity work, the stress management, the nutrition, it all maps directly into what the research is saying protects the brain. It's not a coincidence. That really is what we designed. That's how we designed it on purpose. So let's talk about the 5 pillars of brain health for women. So pillar 1 is hormones. So let's start with the one that maybe your doctor has or hasn't really had a conversation with you about. This is your hormones and what's going on. So as we've discussed in numerous different episodes, estrogen is not just a reproductive hormone. It's a brain hormone. It influences your memory, your mood, your verbal fluency, which is really your ability to find words quickly, and the health of the neurons themselves. So when estrogen starts fluctuating during perimenopause, your brain feels it. Now, it's also important to note that there could be other reasons that estrogen is kind of all over the place. Some of it I sort of alluded to earlier, whether we're not fueling our bodies appropriately enough for the exercise or just the day-to-day life demands. So all of that to say, it's worth getting your labs done, and it's worth having a more detailed and in-depth conversation with your healthcare provider about those lab results and what could possibly be causing the results that you're seeing on paper. Now, researchers are finding that there may be what they're calling kind of this critical window. So, a time in perimenopause and early menopause when hormonal support, if appropriate for you and your situation, again, talk to your doctor there, may matter significantly for long term brain health. So, the science is, of course, always still evolving. And this is absolutely a conversation to be had with your healthcare team and not a prescription that I'm handing you. So, it's important to note that this is for educational or informational purposes only, not to be intended as medical advice for you specifically. But what I will say to this is you don't want to let anybody minimize your symptoms, whether that's your brain or other parts of your body, especially during maybe a season of life where it feels like you might be getting into some hormonal transition. You don't want to just handle it as like, oh, it's just getting older. This is just sort of what happens. Unfortunately, I think that was a way that a lot of us were talked to, or that's just the way that generations before us had described what was going on. But I think that now we're a lot more savvy consumers, and it's okay to kind of push back. It's okay to ask questions, and it's certainly okay to fire your healthcare providers and go find people that are going to collaborate with you and really see that they're a part of your team. Your brain is responding to real biological shifts during this period of time. So you're of course allowed to ask questions, and you are certainly allowed to push for answers. I'm a huge proponent of you advocating for yourself. So the word finding issues like I described earlier, or the brain fog, maybe mood instability, anxiety that comes out of nowhere, those are neurological symptoms, or they can be neurological symptoms of hormonal change. So it's not just that you're busy or just that you've got a lot on your plate, though that certainly could be part of it. It's not weakness, it's just a biological shift that's happening. So, what can you do? The first place to start is to just get informed about where you're at in your hormonal journey. So getting those labs done, tracking your symptoms, not just, the major ones, but really starting to pay attention to all of the little cognitive shifts that you might be noticing, and having a real conversation with a provider who's going to take your hormonal health seriously. Not just one that's, going to poo-poo it or hand you a pamphlet and just say, it's normal, read this, but really just, somebody that's going to listen to you, that's going to hear you, and again, is going to look at this as an opportunity to collaborate with you on your health. Pillar 2, this should be no surprise, but sleep. And I know we've heard this, we've talked about this in so many different ways, but maybe we haven't really related how important sleep is to our brain health. So our brain essentially has a cleaning system. It's called the glymphatic system, and it runs primarily while we're sleeping, specifically during that deep sleep stage. What it's doing is it's flushing metabolic waste products out of your brain tissue, including beta amyloid, one of the proteins that's associated with Alzheimer's disease. So in translation, sleep is not just kind of this like passive recovery phase, but it really is an active way that our brain is doing routine maintenance. So your brain is literally kind of taking out the trash while you're sleeping. And if you're not getting quality sleep, the trash doesn't get taken out. So here's where it gets personal, is that my sleep was maybe not just short some nights of the week or fragmented and shallow, but if you have the TV on, if you have your phone in hand, your laptop open, you are technically going to bed, but our nervous system is maybe nowhere ready to actually drop into that deep sleep where real brain maintenance happens. And it can be definitely hard to change some of those habits. I am one of those people that I like to relax at the end of the night with a little bit of Netflix or a little bit of, iPad time, but it's something that could potentially have some real consequences. So the spiral at night with all the media, it's important to note that's not you being lazy. For a lot of us, myself included, it can be the first quiet moment that we've had all day. And our brain does not want us to give that up. I get it because I've lived it and I'm there still most nights of the week as well. But the research on what even 1 or 2 poor nights of sleep does to memory, to word retrieval, to mood, it's not subtle. And when you stack that on top of maybe some other hormonal shifts that are happening around perimenopause that could already be disrupting your sleep architecture, you have a recipe for brain fog that no amount of coffee is going to fix. So what can you do? We can start with input control before bed. So this is really looking at, what does our bedtime routine look like? Maybe that's going screens off at least 30 to 60 minutes before you actually want to be asleep. Not because it's about doing it perfectly, but because our brain is going to need a little time to transition. Really that time to just kind of signal it's time to relax, it's time to go to sleep, and it's time to get down to that deep cleaning work. Pillar 3 is muscle and movement. So this is where we get to talk about the strength training sessions. And while yes, they're building a stronger body, stronger bones, maybe helping you feel a little bit more confident, it's also a great way to strengthen your brain. And I want you to feel the full weight, pun intended there, the next time you are tempted to skip that workout. So again, Dr. Gabrielle Lyon, she really focuses on that muscle-centric medicine model. And one of the voices that I do have a lot of respect for in this space, she has talked publicly about research from her own postdoctoral work showing that better body composition, specifically more muscle mass and lower body fat, correlates with better brain volume. It's not just about the fitness, the way that we feel in our bodies or the way that we look in our clothes, but it really is about the brain health as well. When your muscles contract during heavy resistance training, they release chemical messengers called cytokines that travel to your brain and support the growth and maintenance of our brain cells. One of these is BDNF, so that's brain-derived neurotrophic factor. It sometimes is described as that fertilizer for the brain. So exercise is one of the best ways to trigger that. And here's the part that connects directly to what we do inside the Stronger Way. This is exactly why we train to build bodies and not just to shrink. When you're training to just burn calories, we're really potentially missing about 90% of what exercise actually does for our long-term health, including our brains. Dr. Lyon also talks about what she calls muscle span. So this idea that the years you spend with healthy skeletal muscle are years your body, your metabolism, and your cognitive function are protected. So the muscle that you've built maybe in your 30s, 40s, and 50s is not just about the way that it makes us look. It really is kind of this infrastructure. So for our brain as much as for our bodies. So what can we do? We can strength train and do so consistently. Now, again, we want to make sure that we are appropriately loading the body, that we're following some sort of a progressive overload, just meaning that we're constantly pushing a little bit harder and challenging ourselves, not from a place of punishment, but really from a place of understanding that this is protective. This is a way that we can not only build our bodies now, but build our bodies years into the future. 2 to 3 full body resistance sessions a week really is enough for most people to move the needle on the myokine signaling that your brain is waiting for. Pillar 4, what you eat and supplement matters for your brain in ways that are specific to women and that the most general nutrition advice might completely miss. So let's start with protein, because I was going to go there. Your brain needs those different amino acids to produce neurotransmitters like dopamine, serotonin, acetylcholine, the chemicals that essentially regulate mood, focus, and memory. If you're chronically under eating protein, you are not giving your brain the raw material that it needs to function. And then there's creatine. This is another supplement that is getting a lot of hype right now, but a lot of women still might associate this with a big tub of powder at GNC, or I was going to say bodybuilding.com, but I don't really know that people are using that anymore. Here's what the research actually shows. So creatine isn't just energy source for muscles, it's energy source for your brain as well. Your neurons use ATP, the same energy currency that your muscles use during that hard set in your workout, and creatine helps your brain regenerate ATP quickly, which matters for our memory, our processing speed, and cognitive performance under stress and sleep deprivation. Dr. Rhonda Patrick, that I mentioned earlier, she's a biochemist and founder of Found My Fitness, one of my favorite voices for rigorous science communication right now, has spoken extensively about creatine's role in brain energy metabolism. Women, in particular, tend to have lower baseline creatine levels than men, which means we may actually see stronger cognitive benefits from supplementation. So I have definitely been slowly upping my creatine and adding a high quality gut supplement. So since learning more about creatine and the benefits it provides to our bodies and our brains especially, I have been working on upping my creatine. Gut health also belongs in this conversation. So the gut-brain axis is a real and well-researched pathway. The state of our gut health, our microbiome, can influence inflammation, our neurotransmitter production, and even our mood. So this isn't like some make-believe part. This really is connected to our brains and our neuroscience. So what are some things that we can do here? Well, we can prioritize protein at every meal, aiming for at least, 30 to 40 grams per meal, really focusing on this as a brain feeding strategy. You might consider creatine if you aren't already taking it, but of course, talk to your healthcare provider about proper dosing on that. And then, thinking about investing in maybe some decent supplements to fill in the gaps that your nutrition is not filling in for you. Pillar 5, so stress and the cortisol connection. So this is one of those things that it can feel a little bit unfixable, especially given the different seasons of life that we might find ourselves in. This is chronic stress. So cortisol, your primary stress hormone, in short bursts is protective. So your brain actually uses it. But the problem is in our modern day lives, cortisol can stay elevated, and elevated cortisol, so that kind from maybe running a business, raising kids, managing a household, performing at a high level day after day without adequate recovery or adequate fuel coming in, can be neurotoxic over time. It can damage the hippocampus, which is our memory center of our brain. It disrupts sleep. It interferes with the very hormonal balance that we just talked about. This is why, like, changing our relationship to stress, utilizing, healthy coping mechanisms and stress management, which really can feel like a luxury we don't have, it's really not optional. It is not only protective for our brain, but it really will help us function and just show up better in every area. So when we talk about building a sustainable and healthy lifestyle inside of our program, this is part of what we mean. So it's about how we move our body. It's about how we feed our body, but it's also about taking care of ourselves mentally and emotionally as well. Our nervous system is not a background player, but it really is a part of running the show in so many different ways. And here's the thing that connects all 5 of these pillars is that they're not separate conversations. Chronic stress can tank your sleep. Poor sleep disrupts your hormones. Hormonal imbalance impairs your body's ability to build and maintain muscle. Under-muscled bodies produce fewer neuroprotective myokines, and poor nutrition means that your brain is essentially running on empty or fumes while all of this other stuff is happening. They are one system, and that's why those different piecemeal fixes don't work, because we can't just supplement our way out of a sleep problem. We can't train our way out of a chronic stress response. This is why that inside out approach that we take inside the Strong Her Way really matters. Okay, here is what I want to leave you with before we get to the good part. The window of perimenopause, those years when estrogen is fluctuating and your brain is most vulnerable, is also the window when lifestyle intervention can be the most protective. Researchers call it a critical window for a reason. The things you're doing now in your 30s, your 40s, and your 50s are not just about how you feel today, but they are really laying down the foundation and the architecture for your brain in your 60s, 70s, and beyond. If we just kind of keep calling it mom brain and moving on, you're not wrong to do that, but we could be potentially leaving some valuable time on the table. We're skipping the part where we ask, what is this a symptom of, and what can I actually do about it? That is the question that really changes everything. So imagine being, I don't know, 58, 68 years old and sharp. Not just sharp for your age, but clear, present. You're walking into a room knowing exactly why you're there. Imagine being that woman in your family who modeled what it looks like to take care of your health and your brain seriously, who didn't just like shrug and push it off and say, I'm just tired, or we'll just deal with it at another time, but asked better questions and then took real action on that. Imagine having the cognitive energy to show up fully for your kids, your clients, your work, yourself, and not running just on cortisol, caffeine, and prayers, but actually feeling replenished and like you have ample amounts of the resources that you need. That is what is available to you, not just from a pill, not from a program that promises to fix everything in 30 days, but really from building the right systems consistently over time, from treating your body and your brain like the asset it actually is. The woman who does this work, who takes her hormones seriously, who, focuses on her sleep, who lifts weights knowing that it's protecting her neurons, who fuels her brain and manages her stress. She's not a different category of person from you. She just decided to do something with the information that she had. That's the shift. It's not like this big overhaul. It's not a complete, lifestyle transformation that has to happen in the next 6 weeks, but it really is just a decision that the information that you're receiving matters, but so do you. If today's episode landed for you, or if you felt like you could relate to any part of this story, I want you to take just one step today. You don't have to do all 5 pillars, but just one. If you want to start the whole system, the training, the nutrition, the mindset work that makes all of it sustainable, then you can check out the Fit and Fueled method. We'll have the link to that in the show notes. That's the full coaching program, and it's built specifically for women who are done doing this the hard way. But if you're not ready for that, that's totally fine. You can start with the Fit and Fueled Foundation. The link to that will also be in the show notes below. It's a micro course that we put together that really gives you the foundational framework so that you can start making better decisions today without feeling like you need to completely change everything in your life. Either way, if you're feeling the nudge, today is the day to make the move. Your brain, your health, and you are worth it. And so is the version of you who shows up fully present, clear, and strong, not only today, but decades into the future. All right, thank you so much for being here today. If this episode was useful for you, then please, of course, share this with somebody in your life who needs to hear it, because I bet you can think of at least one woman who maybe has been running on fumes, calling it mom brain, and could benefit from this. Thank you so much for spending your time with us today. Again, I hope that you have a great week. Until next time, train strong, eat well, and remember that we are not here to shrink. We are built here to rise, to be strong, to show up and be who we were made to be so that we can do what only we were made to do. Bye. Thanks for tuning in to The Strong Her Way. If you're ready to redefine your relationship with food, exercise, and yourself, remember it's all about building habits and routines that fit into your busy life without restriction or deprivation. I hope today's episode inspired you to take the next step on your journey to a healthier, happier you. Don't forget to follow the show so you never miss an episode. And if you found this helpful, please leave a review and share it with other women who need a little extra encouragement. Together, we can all become stronger. Until next time, stay strong and keep moving forward.